I watched The Invisible Man Returns, and it was incredibly average in every single way. I can't find a more average movie if I tried. I will be honest, I am a fan of the Universal monster films, especially a lot of the first run films such as Dracula, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, the original Invisible Man, Werewolf of London, Lon Chaney stuff, Lon Chaney Jr. I mean, I enjoy a lot of what that meant to horror, how that was kind of like the start of that visceral kind of the horror that really introduced those gothic themes and stuff, and it really made horror a big-time genre, something that people really went out and saw. And that's really cool to think about because, horror was... It's been on and off again for a while where when it mixes with these other genres, with this, I feel like these films, especially like Dracula and Bride of Frankenstein, these films that kind of are these big drama, almost romance films involving these monsters that have us take a look at ourselves. I think it's really interesting to see that these really big films can really reach a lot of people. And then you get Invisible Man Returns, which tries to say nothing. I mean, the effects are great, especially for 1940. A lot of the stuff in this you're going to really scratch your head and think, how'd they do that in 1940? There was a lot of ingenuity in that. But honestly, I think the effects were better in the original, especially in terms of being as impressive. That was done 7 years prior, and there was some more bold things going on. But also, the story of the original is just so far exceeding this one. The original Invisible Man's one of my all-time favorite sci-fi horror films, and I definitely think it might be my favorite Universal horror film, which I know that's a bold take compared to, Bride of Frankenstein, the original Frankenstein. But there's something about Claude Rains' performance in that film that's just fantastic. I do think Vincent Price does a great job here, and I do think with what he was given, he delivered the best performance he could, especially in an early role for him. But they don't really let Vincent Price be himself in this film, being that this is a big Universal production. A relatively unknown actor was not going to be able to really do what he wanted to do, and I think this film's an example of that. I think there's so much to like about this movie, but then there's so much that I can sit there and go, there's nothing special. I mean, there really aren't characters in this movie. There's nothing really to latch on to. I think the story, I really can't recount much of what happens. It's really, a chase. The Invisible Man's back, and everybody's trying to get him, and he's messing around with people, and, oh, look at him doing these cool effects. He's messing with people. Oh, he's invisible. Please enjoy the fact that he's invisible, It's kind of sad because the original is such a fantastic film. It, really delves into a lot of those themes of, what should we mess around with scientifically, and who are we, and are we fragile in the sense that, under some changes to us, could that really destroy our psyche? This film has none of that. I mean, it's some of it's there, but I will give it pluses for Vincent Price. I think he does a good enough job. I think that it has an old school charm, and I think the effects, while, dated, certainly from the fact that, this is from 1940, I feel like they're really impressive, but compared to the original, I don't think they're as impressive, and I think the effects are actually better in the original. I think they were handled with better care under James Whale, one of the era's best directors. Now, I really don't think this film really had good characters, and story-wise, I mean, honestly, this is one of those films I would definitely declare my rating of a Netflix film. I mean, it kind of falls into that weaker Friday the 13th film of the franchise, one of the weaker films where you're just throwing it on, have on the TV while you're doing something so that you could technically, oh, I got a movie going, oh, I enjoyed these parts, or it has these things that are good, or that one scene was cool, or this or that or the other thing. It's not a cohesive piece that you're going to really celebrate or want to watch or come back to. It's something where, I'm watching through the Invisible Man movies. I'll throw this on. Oh, I'm doing Universal. This is one of the better sequels of these series. But in all honesty, I really think you're much better off with other entries from this franchise. And I think there's much better out there. Heck, I might even suggest Hollow Man to you over this one. And that's another film I'm really mixed on. It's just really interesting that you really get on board with this character and you really enjoy his ride in the original, and then he dies, and then it's like, oh, nope, he's back. It's been 7 years. You've totally forgotten. There's no way you remember. This isn't a cash grab. And that's the thing. People think like Hollywood has evolved in this cash grab mentality. It's kind of always been there, I think. It just changes, I can make fun of Marvel, for being about the toys and how they don't really take risks, and how for a little stretch there all they were commercials to get to the next films, to get you in to watch those, to do this, and blah, 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 blah. It's always been that way, and I think accepting that makes you realize that, we're no better than we were, but to some degree, we were always making a lot of these mistakes and we were doing some things. But learning from that can help us maybe realize that a system where it's not based off of taking advantage of people, but working with people, maybe that's what we should be working on. And I think it's one of those processes where we really all need to listen to each other, and I think that's important. Being willing to listen to your critique, hearing somebody say some stuff about your film can really do a lot. And obviously with this film, I think I'm a little late with giving this director some pointers. I'm only 79 years too late, but I will put it this way. I think it just goes to show with movies, I think there's such a subjective nature inside of it, just like with music and other art forms, that it depends on what you're looking for. And sometimes a few scenes you really enjoy and something you could throw on while you're walking around doing some other stuff, sometimes that's all you're looking for. Sometimes it's a good situational thing. And I don't even necessarily mean with a Netflix viewing that I'm trying to put a movie down, or I'm trying to say that, oh, you should skip this, it's so bad, oh my God, I cannot believe this. It's more saying there's some good elements in it, but all in all, it's not one I'd go out of my way to try to make sure I know I have access to. And that's kind of how I look at my rating system. A Blu-ray is a movie that, yes, I would like to own it, and I'd like to be able to throw it on anytime if I want to. But it's not a special edition. It's not one that I absolutely, need at like the top of my collection. I need to be able to have easy access to, all these features, and I want to know everything about this movie. Not every movie you like in that way, but you like having it. I like a movie like The Lost Boys. It's a fun time. I enjoy The Lost Boys, but I don't need a special edition of it. But I know a lot of people who do, and that's great. I think that's great that we get really passionate about these films. So, all in all, Invisible Man returns. It's a forgettable film. It's not as good as the original, but if you're looking for another entry in the series and you want to see Vincent Price play the Invisible Man, I mean, this is one of your only opportunities to do that outside of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. So, yeah. All right, guys. I'll catch you in the next review.